stand. The blood, the sweat, the pain of these fighters stands. Clip my brain, gonna break it down. Give you the scoop, hold on tight. This ain't no ordinary loot. UFC's the battleground where warriors collide. DieHard MMA podcast, we won't hide. Clint's gonna deep deep, analyze each brawl from the underdogs to the champions standing tall. The fury, let your instincts rise. Feel the adrenaline rush, it's time to defy. DieHard MMA, we're in it for the thrill. Get ready for the madness. Let's make that bankroll spill. Let's make that bankroll spill.
What's going on, diehards? Welcome back to the Undefeated Post-Weigh-In Show. It is Friday, everybody. Happy Friday. We got the weekend right around the corner. We have got the NHL playoffs tonight. I am hoping my Panthers close out 18-1 for them to hoist the cup. So I'm sweating that this evening. But then we also have all the MMA action you could ever ask for in just a few short hours. We've got PFL kicking off. We've got mimosas and waffles. It's an early start time for UFC Saudi Arabia on Saturday. And then Bellator kicks off halfway through the show. And we're going to end our evenings with MMA action over in Bellator. So we've got 3 awesome shows in a row, and I'll also be sweating hockey, which I love, in the middle of it, as a true degenerate should. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Home of Fight, and this is the Undefeated Post-Weigh-In Show. We've never given a bad read on this show. We've never given a bad bet. 100% hit rate on this show, especially when that tinfoil hat pops out, man. You know it's over when the tinfoil hat comes out for a play. Let's get into this card. We got a lot to talk about today. So if it's your first time watching the show, I do the legwork for you. We broke this whole card down on Monday. You can check that out right here on Home of Fight. But then I watch the weigh-ins. I talk with the boys. I check in with the sharps, the people that are much smarter than me, and I give you all the information that I can. And then we watch these guys weigh in and face off. We check and see who had a bad weight cut. We check and see who's actually bigger than their stats say. And then we try to make some intelligent bets to go ahead and round out the weekend. That's what we do here on this show. So thank you all for being here with me. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Let's get after it. We've already got 200 live viewers. Let's do this damn thing. First fight of the night, Kyung Ho Lee takes on Zhang Lao. Both guys made 136 pounds. Now, for whatever reason, they only had I was only able to catch main card weigh-ins for these guys. I'm not sure why they did it that way. I was only able to find one outlet that actually showed like the non-ceremonial weigh-ins. Usually I watch both the actual weigh-ins where the fighters kind of have their guard down a little bit more, and then I watch the ceremonials so we can kind of compare who looked really bad at the initial weigh-in and then who like might have refilled or still looks bad at the ceremonial weigh-in, etc. So we really only have the main card to talk about as far as the pre-weigh-ins, and then I'll talk about the ceremonial weigh-ins for everybody else, obviously. But on this one, these two guys, they size up really well. This is my least interested fight on the entire card. I have spent little to no time on it. I have a slight lean to Long Xiao, I think, in this spot. I think he's the more dangerous finisher, and I think Lee has already struck out against UFC competition a couple of different times. So I'm going to lean towards Zhang Lao in this spot, I believe. But to be quite honest, guys, I have no read for you here on this one. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. There's better spots on the card. I don't know if either of these guys are UFC level, and it's not a spot where I'm interested in getting my money involved in because I just don't have a great read on these road to the UFC guys. So sorry, nothing exciting for you there. But next up, you've got Magomed Gaziasulov. Sorry, missed the S in there. Taking on Brinson Hiberio. 205 for both of these monsters. These guys are absolutely huge. This was an intense stare down between these two guys. They are both jacked. Now, Magamed does have a slight size advantage here in this spot, as you would expect. But Ribeiro, he was up there all smiles, baby. He's pounding his chest up there, gorilla style. He's looking to get after it. This is a guy who goes out there and swings heavies in round one. He's basically Brazilian Sergey Pavlovich. Like, he just wants to knock you out, and if he can't quite get you, he has no problem going out on his shield. That's what this guy brings to the table. Magomed is a guy who I think the UFC is trying to put in a winnable position, right? You survive the first 3 minutes of this fight or so, and he should be able to control basically everything there. But he also is a guy that I've got massive, massive red flags on. He's not very good. He's fought a low level of competition. The guy he fought on Dana White's Contender Series looked like he was fighting up a weight class and was out of shape as all hell. So it was a really easy path for this guy to get to the UFC. I'm not very impressed with him, and especially fighting that bag of milk that he did on Dana White's Contender Series and not being able to get the finish. I worry about him here in this spot. Now, if he gets out of that first round, he probably wins the fight just because that's kind of how Hiberio does things. If he doesn't get that early finish, he kind of tends to fall apart. He leaves his chin hanging out there. But who's to say Hiberio couldn't have made some improvements in the off time, right? Who's to say he couldn't come back and have a little bit better life now that he's made it to the UFC, making decent money? Maybe he can train and focus a little bit more, hire a new coach. You know, that kind of stuff happens. So at minus 340, it's rough, folks. I'm going to pick Magomed in this spot, but minus 340, not a chance in hell. No way are we laying that kind of a price tag on this guy. If you want to take like a inside the distance and get somewhere near even money on him or something like that, God be with you. Like, I'm not doing it. It ain't me. It's one of those spots where you really could only talk me into taking the dog in this spot, because if Brinson Hiberio comes in maybe with a slightly better game plan, maybe takes his time just a little bit more, you know, we could have a guy that is more well-rounded, hits harder, bigger, stronger, faster, that kind. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's a tough fight, guys. It really is. This entire card is sketchy as all get out. It fell apart, and they put it back together like 3 times, and now they're doing that shit again for UFC 303. Did you see my boy Anthony Smith just got another new opponent? Like, that fight has swapped so many times, it's unreal. I'm a little upset because you guys know that I like to fade Carlos Ulberg, and I was gonna fade Carlos Ulberg with my guy Anthony Smith. Now they gave him a grappler who's durable, and even if he gets tired, he's so good at jiu-jitsu that like comeback submission is really going to be difficult for Anthony Smith. So I actually think it might be a harder fight for him. Obviously, Ulberg could have cracked him in the first 60 seconds and put him down, but now he doesn't even have the Hail Mary shoot there for the for the jiu-jitsu angle. So tougher fight for my guy Anthony Smith, actually, believe it or not, I think. But I digress. Frustrating that all these fights keep getting canceled and swapped around. As gamblers, we just got to try to pivot on our heels, find the spots that we can, find that weak spot and attack it as soon as you get the opportunity to, and then hope they don't cancel it. Next fight up here tomorrow, Muin Gafurov takes on Kyung Ho Kang. Both guys made 136 pounds. Kang is about a half head taller than Gafurov. We kind of expected that. He's tall, he's lanky. He's always had that over most people in this weight class. But boy, Muin Gafurov is thick. And that guy's got a big head. You know, I talked about it with Volkanovski. While he was in his prime, I was like, no wonder you can't knock the guy out. No wonder he's so damn durable. His head's twice the size of everybody else he's fighting. That's what Muin Gafurov looks like too. So Kang, I think it's decision or maybe like an exhaustion late submission. I don't see it. I think if he's winning this fight, it's going to be a decision. So Muin Gafurov, if Kang has slipped a little bit, if he's a bit older, he could get cracked. Gafurov does hit hard. He can wrestle, so maybe he can just kind of bully and overpower this guy. I've talked about it before. When you get these wrestlers that are like short and squat, they have an easier time getting in on the hips than the guys that are tall and lanky. So maybe there's some wrestling upside for Muin Gafurov. Guys, I hate this fight. I hate this fight so much. And the line doesn't make any sense. It's never made any sense. So I feel like this should be a pick 'em. Muin Gafurov is the hometown flavor here. He's minus 160. And that kind of makes sense to me because I feel like if it's a close round, which all these rounds really theoretically should be, they're going to give it to Muin Gafurov. The crowd is going to be, cheering for Muin Gafurov. We're not in the Nevada State Athletic Commission. I'm sure Sal D'Amato has pocketed $20K already in bribes for this card. So he's going to get the nod here. If this fight is close, Muin Gafurov is going to get the nod. I really kind of think Kyung Ho Kang has to either dominate or get a finish because I expect him to get completely robbed blind on the cards. That said, I expect it to be a very close fight, like most Kyung Ho Kang fights are. So it's kind of dog or pass from a betting perspective. I can't get around Gafurov at minus 160 in this spot, legitimately speaking. You know what I mean? I've took a look at like the fight ends by split prop. I kind of think that's possible here because I expect that if Kang does win this fight, they're going to rob him blind anyway. So I kind of like the fight ends by split. You can get Muin Gafurov by split at 7-1. That seems far more interesting to me than Gafurov by decision at plus 165 because I have a hard time seeing him winning like a runaway, easily scored decision over a guy like Kyung Ho Kang. So I'm going to pick Muin Gafurov to win, but it's one that I am not betting because, like I said, that money line just feels backwards and wrong. So, if anything, it'll be a sprinkle on that split decision for me. Nicholas Dolby and Rinat Fakhrutdinov up next. 171 for Dolby, 170.5 for Fakhrutdinov. Rinat does have the size advantage here in this spot. Again, expected. He's a big dude for this weight class. Dolby looked very calm, very relaxed. He always does. You can't really shake this guy, and that's really kind of the benefit for him here. I kind of expect Rinat to maul Dolby in the first round or two, and it's going to look a lot like his last fight, where then he just needs to monitor his gas tank, not die in there in the third round, hang on for dear life, and instead of getting a draw, he probably gets a decision. I think this is going to the scorecards. I don't think Rinat is going to be able to finish Dolby, unless there's something wrong with Dolby, obviously, because Dolby's really, really tough to actually get out of there. And especially after what happened to Rinat in his last fight, I fully expect him to take his foot off the gas a little bit. I'll bet you he goes out there a little smarter. I'll bet you he goes out there and goes, you know what? I don't want to get my ass beat in the third round again. So there's probably more control time. There's probably more takedowns. And if that's the case, then we see probably an easy decision here. Rinat Fakhrutdinov by decision is about minus 110. I like that. I don't mind that whatsoever. But I am not parlaying up another minus 300 favorite against Nicholas Dolby. This feels like that spot. I've talked about it before, guys. When you get plus money on a fighter over and over and over and over, eventually the bookies catch on. Eventually the bookies know exactly what they're doing and they dangle it out there. They're like, oh, you cashed on this guy as a dog 2-3 times in a row already. Oh, what's this? What's these more plus monies? Like that's how they treat us. And we all snatch it up because bro is 3-0 in his last 3 fights as an underdog. Why wouldn't I? And that's the fight he gets killed. Like, that's the one where it's like, okay, like, wait, he may have gotten lucky the last couple times. Maybe we underestimated him once or twice, but now we're giving him the appropriate step up in competition. We've got all the data. We've got all the information. We know exactly what we're doing, and we're still going to give you that plus number. I feel like that's what's happening here. Like, I really think that the luck runs out here for Nicholas Dolby this weekend, but I've said that before, and he has cost me money. He's one of these guys that just enjoys snatching food right out of the mouth of my daughter. So I'm not parlaying Rinat Fakhrutdinov this week. If anything, it would be a Rinat by decision prop bet. That way it's a much more comfortable price tag for me to get involved if I was going to do anything. We'll see how I do in PFL if I decide to add that one or not. Felipe Lima taking on Mohamed Naimov. Both guys made 145.5 pounds. Felipe Lima filling in here on just a couple days' notice. This kid is supposed to be very, very good, and they size up really well. Now, Naimov has the much more filled out frame, and I think that makes a difference. You get these young kids. Look at the old pictures of like Conor McGregor. I know he was fighting at 145 back then, but seriously, like when he made his UFC debut versus like when he took the title from Aldo, the physical change that these guys go through. They're scraping and clawing. They're barely able to afford putting food on the table. So yeah, don't get me wrong, they're in great shape, but they're always like a little skinny. And then they get their man muscles, and then they fill out, and then they've got money to start paying for all the good supplements, and they fill out even a little bit more. So this kid is not there yet, right? So Naimov's been there. He's been around the block. He's got his man muscles. He's much, much thicker, and that's something that I think could tend to be a problem for Lima. Now, I didn't get to look into Lima as much as I would like to. I need to still do a little bit of research on him. The week has been a bit of a shit show. I do apologize. But from what I understand, he's a pretty top-tier grappler. Now, Naimov wore the hat, folks. And for that, I will wear my hat. We've talked about it before. There's two angles that we really look for at these face-offs. That's women with neck tattoos and men wearing, well, not just men wearing, but people wearing their traditional ceremonial hats to these face-off. It seems like they just hit at a miraculous rate. When you come in with your hat on and you've got that, you've got your ancestors behind you coming into the fight, you just whoop ass. Like, that's what they do in these spots. So I like Naimov. I do think he's a pretty solid prospect. We've bet on him a couple of times. It's interesting to me that this fight is set at a pick'em. I would think that the full weight camp, the full training camp for Mohamed Naimov would make a difference here in this spot. Again, I got to look into Felipe Lima. I need to do my legwork. I need to do my research. From what I understand, though, like, this kid could be a bit of a handful early on, but I wouldn't. Naimov's not a guy that I go to thinking like, oh, he's going to out cardio this dude. Like, that's not usually the game plan, but flying halfway across the world is a big fucking deal. Changing time zones is a big deal. Waking up at midnight now to go have a fight when you have gone through all that, had a tough weight cut, that's a big deal. Were you training for this guy? No, so you just kind of need to do your natural skill set. That's a tough ask. These short notice fill-in guys just don't do well very often these days anymore. And Naimov is a tough son of a bitch who's hard to finish, who's tough to get out of there. So I will lean towards Mohamed Naimov, but again, I have not put my money on this fight. I have not made any bet on this fight. If I do, I will obviously post that. I'll get it up there. Hey, if you're not in the Home of Fight Discord, there's a link in the description to this video. Come join us. I've got my own channel in there, and the only thing I post in my own channel in there is the picks that I've made for each week. So it's very, very easy to take a look at the picks that I'm on and the tracking what I'm on, things like that. I post them up on Twitter and Instagram, both obviously, but it's easier to find in the Discord. Plus, it's free. Come hang out with a bunch of fight fans. Join the Discord here at Home of Fight. It's a good place to be. All right, guys, next fight up. Jared Gordon takes on Nasrat Haqparast. 156 for each of these men here. Jared Gordon, you guys know I love to fade this guy. He looked fine on the scales today. No issues. He's a professional. Nasrat Haqparast looked really good as well. Very respectful handshake between these guys. But Nasrat is so much thicker. This is the difference, guys. Gordon is coming up to 155 from 145. I know he's been up here for like a while now, but that was the whole thing, is he couldn't quite make 145 pounds anymore. It was a real struggle for him. It was ruining his durability. So he moved up to 155, and now he's older, and these young guys like Nasrat are just bigger than he is, and that's a problem, right? Like, Jared really does his best work when he's able to out-muscle people and out-cardio people. Nasrat Haqparast is not a guy I expect anybody to be able to out-cardio. And the fact that Nasrat Haqparast is like twice as thick in his back as Jared Gordon, he's just a little tank. I feel like he's undersized sometimes at 155, but his build is perfect for fighting this fucking guy. So I really think Gordon's going to have to get the wrestling going if he stands any chance in this fight. And granted, he could. He's a very good wrestler. But if he doesn't, he's in trouble. I expect Nasrat to win on the feet. I expect Nasrat's speed advantage to be a big deal on the feet. I think Nasrat is hitting harder. He's also coming into his man muscles at this point. He looked career best in his last fight, and now he's coming out here in a matchup in a place where he is theoretically in his backyard, right? Like, he's going to be the hometown flavor here for these guys, even though I think he's training full-time in the States. I expect if it's close, they'll give it to Nasrat. I think Nasrat can finish Jared Gordon in the late rounds, and those round 2, round 3 KO props are looking pretty sexy to me. The problem is I've already laid out a max bet. I did chalk up here on this one, guys. I laid the full 7-unit bet here on this spot, but I got reverse CLV'd here. I laid, let me get my numbers here. I laid 7.74 units at minus 250 on Nasrat Haqparast. He moved down to like minus 230 at this point. So, money's come in here on the dog. I get it. It's kind of bouncing back towards minus 240 here just a little bit, which that makes me feel a little bit better. I know a lot of people thinking Gordon's a live dog. He's been good to the dog hunters before. Completely understand. I just think we're kind of at the end of the road for him, right? He's never really had a solid performance against a good level of opposition. Anybody who's good KOs him in the first round and gets him out of there. Everybody else he's fighting really closely with, and even though he's winning on those thin margins, I just think that's going to run out against these younger guys who are coming up and are going to be the next level. So max bet for me on Nasrat Haqparast. I almost parlayed him with somebody, and then I was just like, man, I hate the other favorites on this card. Like, I don't trust anybody on this card. So it's not like me to chalk up on a minus 250 like that Rarely do I ever bite the chalk that way, but I felt like that was the best way to play this guy. Because do I want to parlay him with Renat and risk the Nicholas Dolby? No, I don't. Do I want to parlay him with Magamed? No, I think Aberio could knock that guy out in the first round. Like it made more sense to me to just eat the chalk this time around. So not something I love doing, not something I'm overly comfortable doing, but this week I think it makes a little bit of sense. Next up, Volkan Oezdemir taking on Johnny Walker. Both guys made 206 pounds, and we are on the main card. I did get video of these guys before the ceremonials. No issues for Oezdemir on the scale today. Crowd was going nuts for him, though. It was really weird. He had like a whole little army in there for his own weigh-in during that show. It was very strange. Johnny Walker, though, looking fantastic. Big smile on his face. His hair was crazy today. I love Johnny Walker when he goes nuts with the hair. He's always pulling the crazy eyes. And Walker is huge, guys. He's massive, towering over Volkan Oezdemir. And I think that's a big issue for Oezdemir. Anytime he's like outsized and out muscled like that, I think the guy really struggles. His cardio isn't fantastic. We've seen Johnny Walker go to the wrestling in recent times. We've seen the fight IQ bump up ever so slightly in the last couple of fights for Johnny Walker. He's protecting that chin a whole hell of a lot more. I think Ozdemir's going to have to clip him and hurt him and get him out of there if he's going to win this fight. I have a hard time seeing Volkan Oezdemir out volume a guy like Johnny Walker, especially when dealing with like the kicking range and the wrestling and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of ways for Johnny Walker to win this fight. And in fact, I mentioned this on my Monday show. I have gone to the well with Johnny Walker by submission before, and they're dangling a nice sexy little 11-1 here on me. Maybe we look at the sub prop for Johnny Walker one more time. I know it's not usually his MO, but we have seen Oezdemir gassed out, dragged on the floor, and then he just makes mistakes. He gives up his back. He's given up his neck. Daniel Cormier got him out of there relatively easily. Now that I'm saying that, did DC TKO him? I'm going to have to go back and look at that. I know he's been subbed a couple of times, though. And if Johnny Walker is looking to take the path of least resistance, I think he probably mixes in the grappling to some extent here in this fight. So I wouldn't be shocked if Walker does hit that 11-1 this week, and I might have a little bit of a taste. Xiao Magomedov takes on Antonio Troli, 185.5 for both guys. And folks, for this whole fucking fight, I got to get the tinfoil cap on here because this is the weirdest fight on the entire card as far as what's left. Because Troli, they've just been trying to murder this man. Okay, so you go back a couple weeks ago. I need to do just the whole history here for you, right? Troli, I broke his fight down. He wins on Dana White's Contender Series. He pisses hot for everything. Now, we know it's post-USADA, right? UFC doesn't give a shit about these guys juicing anymore. As long as they can kind of squeeze you through without, slapping your wrist a little too hard, they're fine. They don't even care. So this guy gets his win on Dana White's Contender Series, overturned to a no contest, and he goes out to some bum show and chokes another guy out in the first round. They call him up. They immediately call him up. It's like he would have gotten signed. They send him to the regionals. He gets a win. They immediately sign him. Now, when they bring him in, he's supposed to fight at 205 pounds, which I think is what he fought on Dana White's Contender Series. Yeah, he fought at 205 on Dana White's Contender Series as well. But he's like a muscly blown up, like almost an Alistar Overeem type where like, no shit, he's on the juice. So he's fighting up weight classes where like maybe naturally he shouldn't be. And he seems like he's a little bit undersized up there, but he was even money against OSP when they made his UFC debut setup. Now, you guys know me, my Dana White's Contender Series fade, that first jump into the UFC, that level of competition, they're not quite ready for it. We saw OSP looking pretty good in his last fight. Who knows how that would have gone, right? But that fight falls through. They book him immediately again against Omar Sy, who's making his UFC debut, and he's a big underdog. He's a big underdog. And I'm like, oh, man, they're trying to kill this guy. They like Omar Sy. They want this guy in the UFC. He's a ground and pound specialist. This jiu-jitsu kid is going to get stuck under him and TKO'd. It's going to be nasty. Like the UFC was setting him up in that spot. Well, that fight gets canceled too. What do? They book him against Ikram Aliskerov. And it's like, oh, my God. So they tried to book him against Sy and get him killed. Now they're booking him against Ikram, and they're going to get him killed. But that fight was actually at 185. I didn't realize that. So he went from 2 canceled fights at 205. Now he's fighting in a much more natural weight class of 185. And Ikram is a guy who I talked about, folks. I was like, man, I've got questions. Like I might have taken like a little bit of a submission dart on Troli versus Ikram just because if he gets this fight to the ground, maybe he can drain the gas tank of Ikram and catch him in something. Obviously, I was not serious. That was not a big bet. That was going to be a flyer, something like that. Ikram actually does have a pretty decent ground game from what I've come to gather. So, probably would have donated there just a little bit, but I wasn't bullish on him or anything. It's obvious the UFC is using him to get run over. Tricoli's not a guy that's getting favorable matchmaking. Now, the Sheriff fight falls apart. Or the Ikram fight falls apart. They send him to the main event. They book him against somebody 2 weeks from now. And then the Sheriff fight falls apart on short notice. And so he calls him up and he's like, I'll take it. They book him on like 3 days notice. This guy has been ready to fight for like 3 weeks in a row, was booked to fight 2 weeks from now. And now they're pulling him on late notice to save this fucking card because they need somebody to get in here. But again, it's at 185. They're not moving this up to 205. And when these guys faced off, folks, Tricoli is huge. He's massive. Now, Shera was booked to face Haqparast, layup. They want this guy to get a knockout. They want this guy to end him, get a big win, big stage. Too bad, so sad. Ihar pulls out. They find Jolton Luderbach. Now, Luderbach fully admitted on Instagram yesterday that he was juicing, like literally used the word juicing. And so he got pulled off the card because he pissed hot. All right. That guy I was very tempted to bet on because he's got a BJJ black belt. He's got a judo black belt. He knows how to trip people and get them to the floor. And we've just seen how bad Shera is off of his back. Now, that spot felt like a live underdog, right? Felt like a live underdog. This one initially felt like a straight up sacrifice with Anthony Tricoli coming in on short notice. But, bro, they faced off and he is massive. Shera has nothing from his back. Zero. Absolutely nothing. Tricoli has nothing on his feet. I'll tell you that much. This guy doesn't know what he's doing on his feet striking. But what he does do, and what I remember him doing on Dana White's Contender Series, is he has a massive blast double leg. He has a massive blast double leg. Guys, if he hits one double leg, this fight's over. Like, I don't have any idea what Shera can do defensively from his back based on what we saw in his last fight. It's not a whole lot. This guy could legitimately be the apple pie shitter of the week. Like, I am very tempted right now to take a stab on Tricoli. He's plus 425. And I really need to see his win. Oh my God, Tricoli by sub is 16-1. I am hitting that, guys. I will be betting Tricoli by sub at 16-1. I know he's not great. I know he's pretty bad, but we're seeing, okay. I was going to make like its own video for this, but I got to tell you guys this right now. The UFC is trying so hard to manufacture stars right now. They are desperate for star power. Why they keep rematching Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor and trying desperately to keep that fight together is to get McGregor back in the fucking octagon and get him a win over somebody, to get everybody all hyped up and excited about him again. There's these prospects that look like they're this close. I mean, Ikram in the main event this week. Hamzat, they keep booking him with guys that are really were sketched out about their durability. They're getting a little long in the tooth. Like, the UFC needs stars right now. Since guys like Israel Adesanya hung it up for a bit and walked away, they're drowning without their stars, and they're trying to manufacture some. The problem with that is that you cannot manufacture a Conor McGregor. They come along generationally, they're once in a lifetime, and they very naturally have all the pieces of the puzzle. But the UFC keeps going, that guy's got the it factor. Get him in there. That guy might have it. Get him in there. And they're rushing these prospects into spots that they're not ready for. Now, do I think Tricoli's a prospect? No. Tricoli obviously is not a prospect. In fact, he's probably not even UFC caliber. He's 33 years old. He's going to struggle with anybody he can't get down to the ground. But Shara is a guy that they're trying to make into a star. And this guy is legitimately fighting with one eye, which could really be a problem as far as his depth perception goes, and apparently doesn't have much of a ground game. That's a problem. There's going to be guys in the UFC that are going to completely expose him. And that could happen a whole hell of a lot sooner than some of us are expecting. I'm probably going to have to bet Tricoli in this spot, guys. I know he's coming in on short notice, but the number is right. You know, we talked about the kid coming in on short notice. He's a pick of minus 110. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to do that. But at plus 425, I'll take that shot. I'll take the shot on Anthony Tricoli coming in here. He was ready to fight this weekend anyway, right? He was prepped and ready to go last week. So quick turnaround, get him in there, size advantage, blast double. If this guy can't get up, Tricoli's going to have a huge advantage on the ground. 16-1 sub prop. Let's fucking go. That's absolutely making my card. All right, everybody. Next up, Kelvin Gastelum takes on Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. Kelvin 184.5. D-Rod 184 on the dot. And yes, you heard that correctly, 184. This was a 170-pound fight, and Kelvin Gastelum pulled the old Paulo Costa. That sounds like your personal problem. He straight up was like, 180 catch weight? Nah, I can't make that. We got to go up to 185, bro. Like, Kelvin Gastelum is not cutting weight for this fight whatsoever. And here's the weird part. He gets on the scale and he winks. That's one of those things that pisses me off. I'm like, you make weight. Don't you be getting, I mean, I'm sure he's winking at a friend or something like that, but don't be getting up there and like showboating and acting weird when you miss weight, something like that. Like, you just messed everybody in the whole room up and you're up there feeling yourself. I don't like it. Now, physically, he looks soft. I'll tell you that much. Daniel Rodriguez, very relaxed, smiling, waving, no problems. He looked fine. D-Rod has a significant height advantage here in this spot. And guys, Kelvin has a gut. Kelvin straight up has a gut. I think he's hurt. Let me get this thing back on. I think something's wrong with Kelvin Gastelum because he looks like a guy who just never got the off-season weight off of his belly. You know what I mean? Like that picture of John Jones after he got out of camp where he's got like the full like side sack of weight on his belly because he's been doing nothing but eating for a week after defending a title. That's what Kelvin Gastelum looked like today. I think something is wrong with Kelvin Gastelum. And on top of that, you've got Kelvin coming out here and being like, oh, back against the wall, man. Got to make it happen. Like he's 2-5 in his last 7. And he's talking about how this is a must-win fight. And then you make them move the fight a full weight class up the week of the fight and come in looking like that. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Folks, I have been struggling this week because I think a lot of these favorites are supposed to win. And I think a lot of the underdogs are very suspect. So I didn't have a dog of the week this week. Now, I need some thoughts and prayers from you guys. Our girl Zelda is actually right now at the vet's office having a procedure. She's got a mass that they're having to remove. We're praying it's not cancer. We just went through this song and dance with our boy Link, which is why we do the Link Memorial Dog of the Week. So we're going to need to get this one for my girl Zelda. All right. We need to get her home safe. We need her to make a recovery because the family, quite frankly, can't handle having another dog issue like that. But D-Rod is going to be the one this week, guys. I have been struggling with this fight all week. I said, Kelvin Gastelum is not a guy I'm laying minus 250 on. I was picking him to win the fight. I thought maybe there was a chance if he comes in looking motivated, if he's really trying to reestablish his career, this is the type of opponent that he can beat. This is the kind of guy that he could pace and maybe even hurt deeper into the fight because I'm worried about D-Rod's overall nature at this point. I kind of think he might be a little worn. I think he might be a little past his due date here. He's 37 years old. He got finished in his last 2 fights. He's not looking great, but neither is Kelvin. So you can't lay minus 250 on that guy. Maybe take a sprinkle at the KO prop, right? Maybe hit the round 2, round 3 KO props, something like that. But definitely not laying minus 250. After watching him miss weight, call up everybody and be like, I can't even make 180. It's got to be 185. And then coming in with a spare tire around his stomach, we're fading the shit out of him. This is an undefeated post-weigh-in show bet right here, folks. We are betting Daniel Rodriguez, and I thought I was going to get like plus 190 or something, but this line is already on the move. I'm seeing like plus 170, plus 177 out there. As soon as I get off the show, we'll be adding that to the official record. This is the Link Memorial Dog of the Week for UFC Saudi Arabia. We will be rocking with D-Rod, and Kelvin Gastelum probably gets his walking papers on Saturday. It's a fight where Daniel Rodriguez is hungry. He's pissed off. He's now coming in here with a chip on his shoulder because Kelvin pulled this bullshit, and Kelvin just looks like he couldn't do cardio. So that usual Kelvin durability and cardio, is it even there this week? Something might legitimately be wrong with him that caused this whole situation to happen. So I'm jumping in. It is what it is. All right, folks. Co-main event, Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov. Pavlovich 160, Volkov 158. So we've got some big old boys here. And Pavlovich, absolute human tank. You guys know this man is huge. Russian experimentation on the scales this morning. Alexander Volkov, though, he's even larger, like physical frame-wise. Not muscle-wise, but he's huge. He's tall. He's massive. These guys were talking to each other. So we've done the whole song and dance about these guys being former training partners, hanging out together. Volkov's been massively sarcastic all week about like, oh, every time he touched me, it just went dark. It just went black. Oh, Dix Insider, my man. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate you, my guy. All right. Whoop, that was the wrong one. There we go. Yeah, so Volkov's been like nonchalant, like dismissive and joking of like everyone just saying Pavlovich is going to knock him out right away, right? Like this KO line opened at like minus 160 and now it's like minus 140, minus 135 for Pavlovich. And I'm thinking these guys are former training partners, they're buddies, they might softball each other. We could get some grappling, stuff like that. But at the face-offs this morning, they had to be kind of split up and told to get the fuck off the stage because they wouldn't stop talking to each other. And it did not look like friendly conversation. Like these guys are really starting to like get to each other a little bit. Maybe this is a Rashad John Jones type situation, right? They trained, and I've said it before. One of the training partners thinks, the other training partner knows. We find out on Saturday which one knows about this situation. But the walking quietly that Volkov has been doing has me kind of interested in my boy. You guys know he's my favorite Russian, right? And I've always been looking for angles to fade Sergey Pavlovich. Unfortunately, I picked kind of the wrong times for the most part throughout his career to do so, but I still think he's primarily round one or bust. If I don't get a finish from Pavlovich in round one, I do not expect him to end up going through and winning the fight. In fact, more often than not, he's gotten finished, right? When he doesn't get that win, he's going to be the one who ends up getting iced on Saturday. I think the height and reach of Volkov could cause him problems. You go back to that Derek Lewis fight where Volkov kept his distance for a full 15 minutes, kicked the shit out of the dude, and was literally like 1 second away from winning a decision over Derek Lewis before he got caught. That might be the game plan here for Alexander Volkov. But I was thinking maybe over, maybe decision, you know, those kinds of things. Because if they're buddy, if they don't fight each other very hard, guys, I don't think that's happening. Like maybe Russians are just built different, but the way they were like looking at each other and the way they were talking to each other this morning, I do think they are going to go out there to fight. And if they're not being all buddy and going out there to, you know, not hurt their friend, then this fight is going to be your classic Pavlovich fight where somebody's going to get hurt and it's going to happen early. So it just depends on what side you want to take. I have passed up until this point. I've bounced back and forth on the unders and overs because of the weird training partner situation. I'm going to stay off it. This would be dog or pass for me. You know, if my guy Volkov is looking good during the fight, if Pavlovich doesn't get the finish in 3 minutes, maybe we can hit it live or something like that. But it's a fight I'm not going to have a whole lot of investment on. It's really volatile. I could see it going a lot of different ways. All right, everybody, main event time. We got 600 live viewers right here on Home of Fight. Thank you all so much for being here with me. And hey, right here on YouTube, in the description below, guys, there's a link to join BetOpenly. Those of you who have played before, you know what's coming. UFC 303. Big pay-per-view coming right around the corner. We are starting the Gauntlet 3. It'll be our third time running this bankroll challenge. It's a $50 bankroll challenge. So if you start with $50 on BetOpenly, one MMA bet per week for 6 weeks in a row, winners get prizes. First place gets $300. Second place gets $200. Third place gets $100. In the last one that we ran, geez, I actually got second place. I made $250 throughout the bankroll challenge. That was good enough for second. And then I got that $200 prize stacked on top of it. I ended up actually giving that away, but I made $400 just playing in this contest. So there's a chance you guys can win money straight up just from being in the contest. You're saving money because you're getting 1% juice instead of laying minus 110. So you get better odds on everything with BetOpenly to begin with. But then if you're one of these top 3 finishers, you're going to get prizes. $600 we're giving away. And all you got to do is sign up for BetOpenly and deposit $50 to join. If you're on BetOpenly already, you just need $50. So you don't even have to deposit anything if you're already on there, right? So $50 bankroll challenge. We want to blow this one up. We're starting at UFC 303 next week. So please click the link in the description below. Get signed up. Let's do the damn thing. Let's see here. Rob Whittaker, Ikram Aliskerov in the main event. 186 for Rob, 184 for Aliskerov. Rob Whittaker was stone cold today, guys. Stone freaking cold. And he gave a huge flex. He looks amazing. This man is in shape. He knew he had a main event coming up against Khamzat Chimaev. Let me tell you that. Ikram, on the other hand, blank gaze today. Far off look in his eyes. Guys, I think he had a hard weight cut. No shit, right? Like he started cutting weight last week, and this guy's big. There were some people online were like, oh, he didn't cut weight. Like I never saw anything supporting that. These guys start cutting weight like a week out so they can make it. And it looks like this guy went through a second weight cut when he's standing there on the scales today. He looked exhausted. He looked drained. He looked like he couldn't see the person standing in front of him because he was seeing God. And that's the kind of tough weight cut that I like to be on the other side of, right? I don't like that Ikram got flown halfway around the world, just like these other guys we've talked about. I do not like that he was flown halfway around the world for this fight on short notice. I don't like that he potentially had a second weight cut and put his body all through that. I don't like that he's changing time zones when he was ready to peak, physically ready to peak and fight a week ago. It's not a recipe for success. Now, Ikram is big. He's got a slight size advantage on Rob Whittaker, but he's also a bit skinnier. So physically, muscular-wise, Rob has the size advantage there. He's a little thicker. This was a very respectful face-off. Guys, I do have a bet on Rob Whittaker in this spot, and this is one of those come take it type of spots, right? I did this with Alexander Volkanovski, and that didn't end very well because they took it. But I am betting Rob Whittaker in this spot 10 out of 10 times. This is a huge buy low price tag on a guy who is legitimately ranked number 3 in the world. I was very tempted to bet Rob against Khamzat because Khamzat still isn't proven in the top 5 at this point, and all these health issues and stuff like that. You never know. The guy doesn't have cardio outside of round 1, so it was like round 1 or bust. I kind of feel like Aliskerov is very similar in that aspect. Now he's got 15-minute cardio, but does he have 25-minute cardio? And does he have that 15-minute cardio a week removed on short notice halfway around the world? Too many question marks for me to support Ikram. Now, if he was a plus 250 dog, maybe a different story, right? But this line is too close. I've got to go with Rob. I've got to go with the back class. I've got to lay it with the guy who's been there before and is really fighting to get back to that title. He's number 2, number 3 in the world. Has been for years. Until this guy goes down, until he gives me a reason not to back him, I'm going to continue backing him, especially at this price tag. And my guy, All I Want Dream in the chat, yes, Rob 3, 4, 5. That's the way I'm looking on this one too, because I really think Ikram is going to tire himself out. I think this is going to be a violent fight because Ikram probably needs to win this thing relatively early in order to get it done. Rob can be had. Rob can be hit. Rob can be hurt. We've seen that before in the past. So I'm not ruling out the fact that Ikram could just flatline Rob early. I'm not saying he's a lock or anything like that. I'm saying at this number, I have to bet this guy. And I expect Ikram to slow down because of the circumstances. And if he does, I don't think Rob's going to drag this guy to a 25-minute decision. We've seen him do that before with these tough and durable type of guys. But I think if Ikram doesn't get that finish early, he's going to be tired. He's going to be a little shell-shocked. He's going to look worn. And those guys, Rob pounces on. Those guys, Rob takes out. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rob gets this thing done via KO in like 3, 4, or 5. Now, sub obviously on the table anytime someone's tired. I like to bet against gassy fighters or people who are exhausted with the submission because they're tough enough to not go out cold. So if the ref's not stepping in to save them, the fighter has to grab a neck, right? That's the way you get rid of somebody who's too tough to KO. So sub is definitely on the table at some point. But I'm on Rob Whittaker for better or for worse this week. So I came into this fight with 2 bets, folks. 2 bets. I've got my max bet on I said Kelvin Gastelum in my brain because of course I did. Nasrat Haqparast, and then I've got Robert Whittaker in the main event. It looks like we're adding Daniel Rodriguez as the dog of the week. We're adding Anthony Troli. We're going to get some of that sub. We're going to add Johnny Walker. I've been looking at him all week. I've wanted to bet Johnny Walker literally all week. I need to run the tape on Felipe Lima, but maybe we're adding something on Mohamed Naimov. And Renat Fakhrutdinov by decision, potentially, maybe something along those lines. Now, there is PFL today, folks. I am geared up and ready to go on that as well. If you join the Discord here at Home of Fight, you'll see I already posted all of my picks. I've got Michael Dufort. Really love that kid. Saw him coming a mile away. Bet him last time out. Got a better number back then, obviously, but I like him a lot. Taking a flyer on Elvin Espinoza. He's a big dog, small, 1-unit shot. I am bucking the trend and taking C and Breeze over 1.5 in this spot. I know Breeze is like a round 1 quitter, but he's taking on a guy who's the same size as him, a guy who's also moving up from a lower weight class. I think they're going to match each other a little bit better in this spot. And so because of that, we may not get that early finish. And especially if Breeze tries to grapple, I think the fight could get extended. Again, small bet, 1.25 units at minus 125. I've got Doltsvan Yegshi inside the distance at minus 105 for 2.1 units. I love that spot. And I did sprinkle him by submission at 7-1 for a half unit. People forget that guy's got a damn ground game on him. I'm expecting him to finish. The PFL season is not set, so they need points. So these guys are all going to be looking for that round 1 finish, and the PFL sets it up so their stars get soft matches, and they can get those round 1 finishes, so they get the most points. And it's not fixed fights, but they softball them sometimes so they can get the points they need to be in the finals. Then I do have a parlay, Albrechtsen and ACJ, because I love fading Anthony Sanchez, and he's coming in on short notice, and he looked bad. I don't know if he's ready to go a full 15, and the guy gets knocked out. So I think Albrechtsen is going to KO him in this spot. That's even money. I've got Clay Collard and ACJ in a second parlay. ACJ kind of a little mini anchor for the PFL here this week, and Clay Collard in the main event. I think he's got the better cardio. He's got the better hands. They don't favor the grappling as much. I know he struggles with the grappling a little bit, but this is a big step down. We've seen him hurt guys better than this in the PFL before. And then, folks, I'm all set up. We are going to Turkey, baby. I've got a parlay, the super turkey hair transplant parlay. We talked about it, right? Like if I get one of these big ass parlays and I make 100K or something on a bet, that's what we're doing with the money. We're going to Turkey and we're getting the hair fixed. Antonio Carlos Jr. inside the distance. Yagjimuradov inside the distance. Rob Wilkinson inside the distance. Patricky Pitbull inside the distance. Impa Kasangane inside the distance, and Clay Collard inside the distance. So that's 6 finishes from the PFL that I'm looking for. Again, I'm really hoping that the point needing format helps me with this one. But if we get through those 6, then we've got Renat Fakhrutdinov by decision, Johnny Walker inside the distance, Rodriguez by decision over Kelvin Gastelum, and Rob Whittaker inside the distance. This is just a little sprinkle for fun. I've made the joke about going to Turkey to get my hair transplanted a couple of different times. We're taking the shot at it. Obviously, it's a small bet. It's crazy, stupid long odds. It's 9 legs that I need to get exactly perfect this weekend. I don't expect to hit it. People were mocking me about like, oh, this guy works for the books. Like, guys, it's a little sprinkle for fun. Like, shut up. So root for me. If you want to tail me, I don't suggest it, but if you want to tail me, the payout is massive on that bad boy. And hopefully this time next week, we are booking our round trip flight to Turkey. So fingers crossed, baby. Let's make some money this week. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. I actually don't have any Bellator action. I don't like this Bellator card very much, except for the ass-kicking machine in the main event. You guys know I love him. I'll probably find a way to get on there. I got to do a little bit of work tonight to look into Bellator. I finished up my UFC stuff. I looked into PFL next. Bellator is last on the list, especially because they're last as far as showtimes go. So I will get to work on Bellator. If I have anything, I will post all that up as well. I hope you guys get out there, kick some ass, have a wonderful week. Let's make some damn money, and let's get not get on track, stay on track, because we had a hell of a week last week. Let's stay on track this week. Let's freaking go. Let's roll.